Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 4, the final part for today. My website is ggnonline.com and on YouTube ddarko2012 and ddarko2013 on my channels. Alright, I'm going to leave off, we left off with this article, but I'm going to continue and just go into this article a little bit more. U.S. ignites tensions on Korean peninsula to target China, says Richard Becker. Says here, clearly U.S. officials, the administration of the Pentagon, the elite, and the U.S. see China as a competitor of the U.S. in the long run, so they are targeting North Korea right now, but the overall strategy is one of surrounding China and Korea with military bases that stretch from Japan to the Philippines, including Taiwan, and the direct deployment of U.S. naval and air forces all around the region. Again, so it's like, I think it's more, it could be more complex than that, because if we're supposedly living in a global economy, which we are, we're all interdependent on each other, like I was going into in the last video. So it just seems to me it'd be the powers that be, the global powers that be, that are using the same old Western military might machine of the United States corporation to basically not let China start to assert its sovereignty at all, right? They don't want them doing that. They want them to do what they're supposed to do. I mean, we just had what? We were covering this. China mobilizing troops and jets near Korea. They placed their military forces on heightened alert in the northeast part of the country. I saw an article about the Communist Party basically going after this journalist who posted this article in London, basically saying that, you know, China should work more with the United States, and they should abandon North Korea because they have no real interest. They don't get anything from it, right? And it's interesting because there's another article too where he had Henry Kissinger saying, you know, U.S. should strengthen, you know, U.S. Sino, that's Chinese ties. So, you know, I don't have all the answers. I've said that before. I wish I did. I wish I could see the bigger picture. But I know a lot of it has to do with the global company and just energy resources, and they give the illusion of national autonomy and independent states when they're not, and they have puppets. And Georgia says it will further monitor Russian naval exercises. The Georgian Foreign Ministry has announced that Georgia expresses deep concern about the unplanned and sudden exercises of the Russian military, which go beyond the territory defined by the Vienna Agreement. Last week, Russian president ordered the start of exercises that were unannounced in the Black Sea. They also told the United States they were not obliged to tell them of it. Says here it envisioned, or whatever it had, 7,000 troops, 30 ships, 250 armored vehicles, 50 artillery pieces for different purposes, 20 combat aircraft and helicopters. Then we have rapid deployment forces, airborne troops, and special forces. It says here the exercise held in a region where in less than a year the Olympic Games in Sochi to be held. Thus the security of the region has been declared a priority for law enforcement bodies and the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Also, I've just covered recently that what would this be? The Russian Federation's police, whatever, basically have increased in size doubled since the KGB, or basically, yeah, doubled since the days in the early 90s and that. But also they've spread out in outlying areas of Russia. But again, I don't know how much this actually has to do with them, you know, trying to rebuild the Soviet Union, or is it just like the piracy? You know, the whole thing about the piracy, you know, does it have to do with actual piracy? Or does it, you know, because you had China and the U.S. China and Russia actually creating this naval fleet strike force team to, quote, combat piracy. So, you know, I don't know what this is. Is this just all of these different companies working together for the big company to make sure that nobody competes with them or, you know, takes part of their action or piece of their action? All right, so you got Georgia monitoring Russian naval exercises, and you have Israel also monitoring the Russian fleet using these little spy rocks. Said here that Israeli commandos launched a daring raid into Syria territory to plant sophisticated camera equipment that look exactly like the indigenous rocks. Russia going back to Afghanistan, the Kremlin confirms it could happen nearly 25 years after Soviet troops left Afghanistan in defeat. after the United States created what? The Taliban to fight them. Russia may return in order to serve the Russian equipment that makes up the backbone of the Afghan military. This is what I'm saying about, just all these countries working in tandem. You have the U.S. go in there, and they have to just keep these people down, like what 108 Morris says about most of these bombings in these campaigns, like in Mali, wherever. It's basically by racist countries, and by that he means they target people that are still homogeneous. And they want to break up all the tribes and that. They want to break up and fragment the society and create refugees. You lose your sense of history, and then you create, you rewrite history, and then you determine their future. But what I'm getting at is that you have the United States going in there, in the 80s with Russia and that. And they said that was what? That was to bring down communism. That was to bring down the Soviet Union. It drained them economically. And that was the purpose, and that's why they created the Mujahideen and all that. Like Brzezinski said, your jihad is just. We know that they're using these people as just basically tool bags, as useful idiots. The former KGB operative said, see on his YouTube videos, that Brezhnev guy, that they're coming in here now. They already have the opium trade going, the U.S. and Marines guarding poppy fields and going through Turkey. That's a big exporter in that. Of the opium and that into Europe, and then what? And now you got the rare minerals. So who's that going to go to? Is that going to go to Russia? Just give us our opium trade, and you could have the minerals, rare minerals. Afghan teen stabbed U.S. soldier to death and escaped. Details are emerging about the killing of a U.S. sergeant last week, with officials confirming that he was stabbed to death by an Afghan civilian believed to be a teenager. They said he was acting on his own in the killing, but has since joined the Taliban after fleeing the scene. Taliban chief Omar can run for Afghan presidency, says Karzai. So the Taliban leader can run for the upcoming presidential election. So it goes on here. It says Karzai said the Afghan constitution is valid for all Afghans, and the Taliban also should benefit from it. Okay, next up we have the CIA worked with Pakistan to create Taliban. Just basically going over what I said is Central Intelligence Agency worked in tandem with Pakistan to create the monster that is today Afghanistan's ruling Taliban. A leading U.S. expert on South Asia said, "I warned them that we were creating a monster," says this individual from the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars in a conference last week on terrorism and regional security. Said the CIA made a mistake in encouraging Islamic groups from all over the world to come to Afghanistan. They provided $3 billion for building up these Islamic groups, and it accepted Pakistan's demand that they should decide how this money should be spent. Then I saw this article. Of course, there's Angelina Jolie, right? It says 13,000 girls deprived of education in Coast. So nearly 13,000 girls in southeastern Coast province were deprived of education and indoctrination into this world system during the last academic year as a result of defunct schools. He asked civil society groups, journalists, tribal elders, and religious scholars to cooperate with the education department in strengthening girls' education. So this is coming, of course, right? This is building up for what? This. Angela Jolie opens all-girls school in Afghanistan. So the 37-year-old actress and UN HCR Goodwill Ambassador has extended her generosity to a small village outside Kabul, Afghanistan, where she's opened an all-girls elementary school. The doors of the school are already open, says, and the location was targeted not only because there is a high refugee population, not by mistake, but it's also a place where education of boys is valued higher than of girls. Well, it sounds all nice and lovey-dovey, especially when it said that she used her own jewelry or collection. But this is what I'm saying. It's two heads of the same beast. There's no other way to put it. They create the refugees, whatever the West, Israel, U.S., U.K. They fund terrorists. Then, in the name of fighting terrorists, they go in there and just start dropping bombs on these same people that they're going in to quote educate and help, and they put up all this money and tax dollars and that. To help with this refugee crisis that was created by them. Taliban blow up girls' school in Pakistan. This is from January of 2013. Reportedly, the girls' primary school in this Budbear area of Peshawar was totally damaged in the attack. There was no casualties. It says the authorities blame Taliban militants for the attacks on schools. And it wasn't just a girls' school. This happens a lot where they attack schools. Hamas law promotes gender segregation in Gaza schools. So this is some really, again, some really just kind of conflicting stuff going on. Try to put your finger on it. Hamas law promotes gender segregation in Gaza schools. So over there in Afghanistan, the Taliban, or supposedly Islamic extremists, are blowing up schools, girls' schools and stuff like that, the schools in general. Then you have this Hamas that's supposedly, hardcore extremist Arab Muslims, and they're promoting gender segregation in Gaza schools. They'll no longer be able to teach at girls' schools. Men will or won't as of next year. It says boys from age of 9 to study in separate classrooms. It says critics of the new measure say the Islamist movement is trying to force its ideology on society, but proponents say they merely want to codify conservative Palestinian values into law, saying we are Muslim people, we do not need to make Muslims, and we are doing what serves our people and their culture, says the education minister. Like the Taliban, Hamas was created by what? They're created by Israel and the United States and intelligence agencies. It's all about the controlled opposition, like we were just talking about with the economy. The NRA, putting out all these ridiculous proposals because, they're supposed to be the opposition, the controlled opposition, speaking for gun owners. Well, they're speaking for the military-industrial complex, the defense industry. That talking about that movie, Promised Land, right? The environmentalists work for the same gas company. The West created and runs Israel, Hamas, the Free Syrian Army, and the Muslim Brotherhood. When the public needs to be manipulated, a deadly ballet ensues. While Israel conducts combat operations against Hamas in Gaza, they are supporting their affiliates in Syria just across the border in Golan Heights. And every time Israel wants a distraction or the ability to go on the offense, well, they just tell their little controlled opposition, Hamas, start firing rockets over the border, and then they just unleash holy hell on these people. Palestinian Prime Minister hospitalized with abdominal pain. The source says 61-year-old who suffered a heart attack, probably microwave weapons, but either way, 2 years ago has pancreatic infection. It's even more credible what I'm saying here when it says he suffered a heart attack 2 years ago while visiting family in the United States. Yasser Arafat poisoned with polonium, so he could just be like this guy, right? May have been killed with a lethal dose of highly radioactive substance. And of course, the results will come out in somewhere after May of this year. You have CIA has attempted to assassinate 50 world leaders, including Chavez, says William Blum. UK Peer says MI6 killed late Congolese Prime Minister Lumumba. London spy agency MI6 murdered the first democratically elected Prime Minister of Congo. But it's not the first time. Mali coup led by U.S.-trained captain. U.S. AFRICOM official confirmed on Friday the leader of the military coup d'etat in Mali has visited U.S. on several occasions. Interesting, too, because this Amadou Toure was what? He was Mali's first democratically elected president that was ousted by the CIA. Interesting, too, because in Algeria they had what? They had a CIA operative from Afghanistan, actually, that was responsible for what was going on in the, basically the refinery, though, the fuel refinery, where a bunch of hostages were killed. Palestinian prisoners declare hunger strike after inmate dies of cancer in hospital. So in these prisons, the inmates receive no medical attention. They say Israel is responsible for his death. Obama and media keep Americans in dark on the mass hunger strikes at Gitmo, Guantanamo. It says here that they're on their 55th day of hunger strike of 13 inmates. This says the media just proceeds to go along with the Obama regime's effort to make everyone forget about it. Burma Mosque blaze kills 13 children. Again, this is a Western puppet. Suu Kyi's democratically... this is democracy in action. These are mobs of Buddhist extremists that attack mosques and Muslim-owned businesses. Boeing helped kill proposed law to regulate drones. It says here that the bill is going to make the government obtain a warrant before using them to conduct spying missions. Remember, they were going to hand these drone assassination strikes over to the Defense Department, but U.S. lawmakers say CIA should keep armed UAVs so they're not accountable for killing women and children. With most sovereign nations killed off, the rise of the U.S. Special Operations